All right, hello everybody, and happy Halloween. Yesterday I didn't know what I was going to do today, but then I realized that today was Halloween, and so there's an obvious thing to do today, and that would be to talk about one of my favorite scary movies. It's not like a scary movie, like a jump scare scary movie, or even like a jumping out at you scary movie, right? Like the movie I want to talk about today is the 1978 version of Dawn of the Dead, the original version by George Romero, right? This is one of those movies that was on cable when I was probably a little too young to be watching it. My family had one of the, I forget which one, but it was one of the premium channels that would actually show full movies and stuff like that. And Dawn of the Dead was on cable on that channel a couple of times a week for several weeks back in the late 1990s when I was probably what? I mean, I guess I was old enough to have watched it, but like I watched it a bunch of times and maybe that layered the effect a little bit. Um how old would I have been when that was? Probably about 13, 14 kind of range. So probably old enough to watch it. I don't know. Was it rated R? I guess it must have been rated R, huh? So technically, but at the same time, I think what happened was that watching it a bunch of times it kind of digs under your skin, and there's a reason for that. That even though the second half of the movie is kind of got a little bit of slapstickiness to it, and there's a lot of like focus on that last final crazy action scene with the bikers, where they have all those really really amazing zombie gags. Is that what they call them? Prop things to do gore, right? The first half of the movie, though, is relatively serious. There's a few light-hearted bits, like the rednecks and the National Guard people fighting off the zombies in that area and kind of drinking coffee and listening to music and stuff like that. But but the way that the movie kind of progresses, and you get to watch as the small bits of civilized humanity get whittled away and whittled away and whittled away a little bit by bit, by this mindless, persistent, stupid, slow, but persistent and numerous zombie horde. Right? It really got to me because you know there's that line early on, right? I forget who says it, but this is like we're doing it to ourselves, right? Humanity in Dawn of the Dead is kneecapped by its own internal conflicts, its need for infrastructure. Those are the two obvious things. But going deeper than that, like one of the things that hurts humanity in the early days of the zombie war is their respect for the dead and their love for the people that they've lost, right? That they kind of are praying that they haven't lost. And I always thought that was a really interesting concept, right? You have that initial scene where they're going into that apartment building, right? And they know that these zombie things are that the dead are going to turn into these mindless brain eating creatures, and yet their respect for the dead, their desire to honor the dead, prevents them from doing what needs to be done, basically. And that's a very human. It's almost a respectable human failing. You know what I mean? Like that it's against you. If you see someone doing that, it's against their best interests. But at the same time, you're like, well, they're trying to honor and respect the body of someone that they really cared about. And I don't know, something about that really got under my skin as a kid, and it was like, man, if there was an enemy, an unstoppable or difficult to stop horde of something that used our own sentimentalism, our own best traits against us somehow, right? That even though people would resist, people get like cabin fever. They need constant supplies of food and water and clean sewage, right? Or not clean sewage, but like clean facilities to remove sewage, right? It's like one of those things where people people evolved out of living in big walled cities right? And then suddenly something comes back that's like, oh, you should have stayed in those walled cities. I don't know. There was just something about that kind of aspect of it that really got to me. And like watching the television broadcast that they do in the show, and the scientists going back and forth about how they're dealing with it. And the other thing that's really cool, or really like interesting, is how like the early on the public TV station is sending out outdated information about rescue stations. It's another, human failing. We want to have we'd rather have information than good information sometimes, right? We'd rather have information now rather than the best information later. And then there's also the guy who's running the TV station who's like, people aren't going to watch if we don't provide these stations. The government's telling us to provide these stations. This is the information that we have. We know it's out of date, but we don't have anything new, right? We don't know which of these stations, these rescue stations are out. But we know that some of them are, but we don't know which ones. So what do we do? It's, there's that government decree that people may no longer maintain themselves inside public houses, inside private houses, no matter how safely protected or well stocked. Things like that. It's one of those things where like people are their own worst enemy. And when faced with something like the zombies in Dawn of the Dead, they trip themselves up to the point where they make their own mistakes and they doom themselves. There was also in like the scientist talking, there's that guy who's like, well, people are trying to look at this and try to see if they can figure out a cure and stuff like that. And it's like, they have, number one, they wasted a bunch of resources, trying to cure something that's effectively brain dead, right? Like even if you could bring back to life most of the tissues, right? The brain has been sans oxygen for however long. It's probable that all the useful information has decayed away, with all the connections, kind of thing. And like that dissolution of the public trust by way of the public authorities providing bad, outdated information too is another like mind-blowing thing back when I was a kid. I don't know why, but this movie got under my skin, and I kind of was like, I don't know, it kind of influenced me in a significant way of like worrying about things that prey upon our own best impulses. Not even impulses, but our own best like desires, something like that. I don't know. I don't know. There's things about the movie that eventually make it kind of less serious, right? You have the slapstick parts at the end. You do have occasional parts where things are not really serious. The movie is not fully serious, of course, but like at the same time, you have that point where like it's Roger, right? Roger is like trying to move these trucks around, and he's getting really, really, he's kind of getting like cabin feverish, where he's like getting too overly arrogant, too overly unsafe, right? And that leads to his downfall too. There's Romero's little anti-consumerism message in there that's given up in a couple lines, whatever. But like all in all, this is one of those movies that if you watch it a couple times and if you really think about it, if you really think about what the zombies are preying on, that it can get under your skin, and you can kind of wonder about like, you have these impulses that you think are good, and you start to question whether there would be something that could take those best impulses that you have, your dignity, your honor, and twist them to use them against you. And that kind of enemy could be something that would not only be a danger to you, but it would be a danger to your own like humanity, to your own civilizational instincts. I don't know. There's something there that really got to me as a kid and continues to get to me a little bit now. I mean, I don't feel creeped out about the possibility of waking up tomorrow and finding zombies walking around anymore, like I did when I was 13 or 14. It took me a little time of like thinking about, well, no, okay, once the oxygen supply, I actually had to kind of think about it from an anatomical perspective and be like, no, I'm pretty sure zombies can't happen, right? And that got me back to the point where I was like, okay, I feel all right about it now. But yeah, I don't know if you've never seen Dawn of the Dead, the original 1978 version. I would highly recommend giving it a look. If you like Night of the Living Dead, this happens immediately afterwards. It's got some really good characters, played by surprisingly good actors. Kind of, they're not like huge actors or anything like that, but they do a really good job for the most part. There's a really good sense of like human conflict. Why humanity is losing to the aliens, to the zombies, and I don't know. It's just something that I wanted to talk about, and I figured Halloween was a good day to talk about it. I've seen the 2004 remake of the movie, and that one is a lot less serious. It's a lot more visceral. It's a lot more about like immediate explosions of gore as opposed to like slow, protracted things. I almost did the aliens thing again. The zombies in the remake are also fast runners, and that makes it a lot more likely that humanity is just done for, right? At least with the slow zombies, you could say, well, mankind can deal with this. We can do it. It'll be hard, but we just have to buckle down and freaking do it. But with the fast zombies, it's like, well, we're probably not going to make it. Which is one of the reasons why I think the 1978 version hits harder for me, is because it's a battle that we could have won but lost. And of course, Night of the Living Dead is a fantastic movie. Day of the Dead is also a really interesting movie. The first 10 minutes of Day of the Dead are they are mind blowing. And then the whole movie is a little bit hammy. It's a little bit overacted, but all in all, it's a pretty solid story itself as well, with some neat little twists in it too. I don't know. I figured this was a good topic for Halloween. What I'm going to talk about tomorrow is I think I'm going to find some of my favorite, funniest Japanese idioms, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those, because those are kind of fun. I will look through my idiom book and pick out 5 or 6 of them that are hilarious. When directly translated, right? That's the point. So anyway, that's all I've got for today. I hope you have a happy Halloween. I got to go get ready and start handing out candy in an hour, a couple hours or so. Yeah. See you tomorrow. Have a good one.